Welcome to the Wesleyan Diaspora Network. Today's topic, how to practice hospitality. Hosted by Reverend Angela Bradbury, Founding Director, International Place of Friendship.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Lyon. It's always good to hear from you.
Thank you. Good to hear. I'm looking forward to it.
So I will have some pictures to share, and I'll get into that in a moment. I just want to give you a very quick background. So I grew up in rural Western Canada on a farm outside of a small community. So that might be similar to North Dakota or Minnesota for those of you in the US. And basically my cross-cultural experience was non-existent growing up. And when I went to Bible college and met my husband and was called to ministry, I didn't identify a specific calling to missions or to work cross-culturally. I just said yes to God. And this led to 22 years ago, I found my husband and I found ourselves in Toronto, Canada, sent to a neighborhood that was 90% immigrant, non-Canadian born. And for me, it was like jumping into the deep end to learn how to swim. So I had said yes to God and had a lot to learn. But ever since that time, I've spent all my ministry years very much involved with other cultures and newcomers to Canada and people very different from me and what I had grown up with. And so I've learned lots. There's been lots of trial and error, but I've often relied on very simple things to connect and relate to people. And so that's kind of what I want to focus on, is pull out just some very simple ideas to help some of you. And as you hear from me, I'm not an expert. I want to talk about some simple things to maybe help break it down for anyone that might feel intimidated or not sure where to start. It doesn't have to be big and complicated. There's lots of little things that we can do with hospitality. And one of the biggest, simplest things is eating together. And it is more than just, putting out your china to host someone. It's the process of breaking down your relationship to eat together. And I actually learned that from immigrants in a real distinct way, more than even what I understood from my own background. When we were in our ministry in Toronto, we had open doors for lots of visitation. And so we'd set up a time, we're going to come and visit you, at 2 p.m, we'll come and have tea or coffee. We often said tea because most cultures, tea is more common than coffee. Mm-hmm. So in my Canadian mind, we're going for a cup of tea. Maybe there'll be a biscuit, a cookie. We'd arrive and there would be a full cooked meal put out for us to sit down and eat with the family. So I learned this was their way of really showing hospitality. You're my guest. I need to do my best. Whatever they had. In some cases, they had very little to share, but whatever they had was put out for us. And so I just learned how important the act of eating together and taking that time together was. And I also learned, as we reciprocated and invited an immigrant into our home, how special that was for them. There was many cases where someone said to us, "You're the first Canadian home that had us in." And that was so special for us to be invited into the home of a Canadian. And I assume it would feel the same for those of you in the US. So our gatherings in our home over the years sometimes look like the picture I have before you. This was a Thanksgiving dinner where I invited, there's some people from Brazil, a few international students come and share in a North American turkey dinner. And for some, that was the first time. And that's, very common for us, right? All in North America. But many times it was also about, let's share a meal together. Bring one of your dishes. Bring something with you that you have. I'm going to make something and we're going to share this together and eat together. And it was an icebreaker to talk about each other's culture or a family dish or a tradition. So we would share together. Well, so this is some pictures that I'm going to go through, which is primarily going to be highlighting our time in Winnipeg with the International Place of Friendship. And so in 2014, Justin and I wanted to expand our ability to show hospitality beyond our own home, with newcomers to Canada, and do a church plant specific with that emphasis on immigrants and newcomers. So we gathered a small group and focused on a ministry that I personally relied on the premise of showing hospitality to people. And of course, someone already put this in the chat, Hebrews 13:2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it.
Mhm.
So hospitality enables us to welcome, show kindness, and embrace the newcomer among us. So at that time, I didn't feel the call to become an immigrant expert and deal with the paperwork. Those things are very valid. I love what the Immigrant Connection does in the US. It's a wonderful ministry. And there may be pieces of that that are even more needed in Canada now than there was 10 years ago. But there is a bit of a different system between things. But I really focused on friendship and building that relationship, which then could also lead to finding resources and making connections for resources. And when we launched the ministry in 2014, I actually did a little bit of intentional research in the community and what's going on. And between that and between some of our experiences with newcomers, we did find that a need that was often missing was the friendship piece, as simply as that. In Canada, we do have certain systems in place that help with the legal and the paperwork, and some of those systems are more overwhelmed now than they were before. But there was a lot of agencies doing pieces of settlement. They could get resources for some things, but they'd kind of go through the system. This is your year or 18 months to do these processes, and there you go, you're done. We'll move on to the next couple. Well, that family has some pieces in place, but here they are in a new country and need a community. They have to find a new network of people. And so that was very much the premise on which I relied on, that to create a space where some Canadians and newcomers could come together and build relationship and connect and build a new community. And from there, some needs and resources could be found. And there were cases where we were able to help with specific needs, whether it was job search, housing, language help. But the heart of it was really simply building those relationships and networks between people to help with that piece of settlement. So that's really what I want to go through, is just some pictures here and some very simple ideas that really anyone could do, and you can do creatively in whatever space you have, whether it's your home, whether it's your church, whether it's another space in the community. So that's what I'm going to share with you now. So with our ministry, I actually intentionally started with a program for conversation groups. English for newcomers who come from a different language in North America. They're always wanting, for the most part, assistance with English. Now, I'm not an ESL teacher, and I thought about it, and then I decided, no, it wasn't my calling, but I created programs that were about conversation, and that I could bring in volunteers to be conversation friends. It wasn't about doing formal trained English. Now, I did have some ESL teachers that would join us, and we would do some structured things, but a lot of it was more about the conversation piece, and creating space for people to practice their English. I tried all sorts of things for discussion. I used lots of icebreaker games. If you've ever done youth group or children's ministry, there are a ton of icebreaker games that you can use for discussion questions to just get people talking and connecting. We did sometimes use intentional materials that there's an abundance of resources for that. But I also used newspaper articles, but those were just the tools. The point of what we did was not about necessarily the English learning, even though that was valuable. The point of it was we're building connections and relationship. And so as we grew, those are our groups did get bigger in our space when I was doing this program. But it was always a space where we have this, I would plan something, but if there was a question because someone had seen something that week that they needed help with, or they didn't understand, or wherever the conversation went, that's where it went. We didn't have to stick to the program because that was just a tool. The point was, how can we build relationship? And if you have a real need, how can we talk about that and help you? And I saw Canadians helping the immigrants, and then I'd see the immigrants helping each other, because those who had been in Canada longer said, oh, I've already dealt with that. I can help you with that. And so the point was to build this network and the community. The language help was just a tool. Games, we used lots of games because that broke the ice. And for Canadians too, or Americans, sometimes it is awkward to build the connection or the relationship. You have someone over to your house and you don't know what to say, and there's a language barrier. Having an activity to break down that barrier gets the relationship started. And there's lots of simple games that do that. And we use lots of games. We did, when certain needs came up, and there was other agencies in Winnipeg, we had a wonderful agency that dealt with housing for newcomers. So they had great seminars developed for people to learn about renting, about home ownership. So they would actually help, they could help newcomers find housing. They had workers that would meet one-on-one and help you find housing, but then they'd put you through a seminar to learn what it means to rent a space in Canada, what's expected for a tenant, what's expected for a landlord, and then they would help match them up. And often that gave the newcomers a foot in for a rental, because sometimes finding housing is a difficulty thing, because you don't have a history in Canada, right? So they do this program, and the landlords trusted the agency. And so it was so we would host some of those seminars that specifically helped with that. And when they were further down the road and looking at buying a home, they'd walk them through those things. So we partnered with other agencies when there was needs identified that we could. We did any activity. I used anything that would break ice with people, and bring kids and adults and people together. So it's as simple as finding an activity that you would do in your home with your family, with your friends, and invite someone to join you. And especially some North American things, newcomers love to experience that. So that's carving pumpkins. Decorating a Christmas tree was always such a fun and huge thing. We'd always do that every year. And that's decorating eggs. Simple activities. Celebrating special occasions together. This was actually a birthday for a 4-year-old, Zainab, from Saudi Arabia. Her husband was an international student, and her 4-year-old son didn't have a bunch of friends to invite because their family wasn't there. And she invited all the adults from our program, from our English program, to come and join. And we were all there to celebrate her birthday with her son. Celebrating citizenship ceremonies, celebrating weddings, celebrating with people. If you are aware of a special occasion, it connects you as a community. It connects you with others. This was my favorite that I did. I love cooking. So that's something I like to do. So I was like, that's something I want to do with people. And so going beyond my home, I was able to have a space where I could have more people. And we cooked together. And I would start it out and I'd pick a recipe and teach everybody, and we'd cook together and we'd practice language. And then I'd have other people share. And the first couple times I did it, I'd do a few weeks. And once I had it going, there was always someone that had their recipe that they wanted to share, and we'd cook together, and then we'd sit down and eat together. And again, I mean, I love the activity. I love sharing the food, but it built and relationships. And out of that, you find those needs, and you make deeper connections, and for the church, you hope to lead to gospel conversation as you make those relationships. We always gathered to celebrate holidays and celebrations, and those got bigger over the years, from that dining room table picture in our house to larger gatherings as we grew. And that's a picture of one of our Christmas ones. Canada Day is a great time to connect to newcomers in Canada, as I'm sure the 4th of July is down in the States. That's just an easy in to say, come and celebrate with us and what we're doing on that day. In Canada, of course, we have lots of winter. So for newcomers that come from our southern hemisphere, snow and ice and all that stuff is such a novelty and fun. So that was an easy activity to ask someone to join in. And here's a picture of a larger group, but it doesn't have to be a large group. You're taking your kids tobogganing, ask a family to join you and experience that. Because I can tell you the adults will want to do it too if they've never done it before. That's a great and easy way to connect with others. We did this is just more things we did. We did a golf night. It came up in conversation. A few people were talking about it. Someone that was from Korea is like, oh, I love golfing. And someone else, well, I've never golfed. And I said, well, would you like to try it? And the interesting thing about that, we have some of our volunteers who were more comfortable with our conversations group. I had one couple who she was a regular volunteer because she was comfortable talking to anybody. Her husband was not. He was a part of our church. He was pleasant enough, but he's just an introvert and wasn't comfortable sitting and talking to people, didn't know how to do that. But he played golf. He loved golf. And I said to him, Harry, would you help me do this? Would you take a group and teach them golfing? Sure, I can do that. I can't necessarily sit and have a cup of coffee and know what to say to someone, but I can talk about golf and teach someone to play golf. So finding something that triggers, for those of you who are thinking about, it's hard for some of our Canadians or Americans, like how to connect, find an activity that maybe strikes that connection to say, would you teach someone this skill? Walking tours, we had a volunteer who loved to talk about our city and introduce our city and some of the history. So she would, we'd get a group together and she'd take them around to some of the downtown and highlight some things and teach them about the city. Canada, we got hockey, right? Everyone loves hockey. So that's an easy thing to introduce people to. Down the States, maybe it would be baseball or basketball in some of the different states. You do have hockey down there too, but and just finding excuses to go to things as a tool to build connections. It wasn't always the point of what the activity was. It was just trying to find things that would break the ice and make connections. We rented a bus one year and took a group to the Santa Claus parade. And that was a mix of our church people, new people, whoever wanted to sign up. And it was a great, simple way of connecting different people. And of course, summer, barbecues, picnics, is an easy gathering for people. And we would often do those, of course, potluck. Please come and, bring your food to share. That was a backyard barbecue gathering. And always bring something to share. So we're going to share this together and connect together with each other. And this is just one last picture I wanted to share because out of the ministry, our church was planted in Winnipeg. And this was actually a picture from last year in 2023, a group from the church when we were back there to visit. And what started with a group of 24 that only included one immigrant couple, the rest were a group of white Canadians, became what you see before you, and you don't see very many white faces in there. So we just, my heart really was just about trying to find ways to connect people and use whatever tools worked. And then we did look to meet some needs, and we did try to connect and build resources. And I didn't always have all the answers, but I just was willing to try and find ways of breaking down barriers and building a community for people.
Excellent.
Thank you, Angie. Do you have questions, comments for Angie about her presentation?
I think your icebreaker thing is really a helpful suggestion. I've used icebreakers a couple of times and they went over well, but maybe just using those more would make it less awkward for folks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I found that even for me sometimes when you're dealing with language barrier and different customs and that and you're not sure what to say, if you have something tangible that you're using as a guide, it just gives you that little boost of, yeah, you've got a direction of where you're taking people, for those who need that boost of an intentional question to answer, because everybody's answering it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? One thing that became very important in that journey that we were on and we are on still is making space and being intentional to invite and welcome the prayer and the work and the service of immigrants toward us into our lives. And so one little example is one of those newcomers that we became friends with, Dadala. He was a construction expert, and he sometimes helped me with projects at my house, things I didn't know how to do. And one really important principle of hospitality is the whole idea of hospitality being reciprocal, that it's not one way, that it's not about us as North Americans always being in the seat of being host. It's very important that the roles get reversed and that we encourage and invite our newcomer friends being in the seat as host and us being hosted. And that dignifies and honors their lives being made in the image of God and what they have to offer and contribute to us that enriches us. And that leads to genuine friendship. We also found in the flurry of activities that we did that along the way, we met many immigrant Christians who had settled in our city. And many of them became integral to the leadership and growth of New Horizons Church. And so God is bringing workers to North America through this whole immigration reality that we are in. And within the mix are many dedicated, committed Christians who are anxious to share their skills, their gifts, their talents with us. And it's important that we have eyes to see and ears to hear.